In the spring of 1901, a crew of Greek sponge divers was forced to drop anchor off the tiny jagged island of Antikythera to escape a violent storm. When the weather cleared, one diver descended 150 feet into the Mediterranean. He didn't find sponges. He surfaced shaking, gasping for air, claiming he had just found a seafloor littered with a heap of decomposing human corpses. What he actually stumbled upon was an ancient Roman shipwreck, a massive vessel that sank around 60 BC, loaded with luxury cargo, marble statues, priceless pottery, and glittering gold jewelry. But among all that treasure, rescuers hauled up a calcified green, decaying lump of rock and bronze. For nearly a year, it sat in the basement of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Nobody cared. It looked like junk. Until May 18, 1902, when an archaeologist noticed the rock had cracked open, and peering out from inside the calcified crust was a gear. Not a crude heavy gear from a watermill, a tiny, precision-cut, razor-sharp brass gear. They had just discovered a literal glitch in our historical timeline. For decades, the mainstream scientific community flat out refused to believe what they were looking at. The consensus was simple. It had to be an anchor dropped by a modern ship that coincidentally landed on top of the ancient wreck. Why the denial? Because according to every history textbook ever written, human beings didn't invent gear systems this advanced until the 14th century, when Europe built its first mechanical cathedral clocks. This device was over 2,000 years old. That is a 1,400-year gap in human technology. To put that into perspective, finding this on a 2,000-year-old Roman shipwreck is the chronological equivalent of digging up a pharaoh's tomb and finding a fully functional battery-powered iPhone. It simply should not exist. It wasn't until the 1970s and later the early 2000s that scientists used high-resolution X-ray and 3D CT scanners to peer inside the corroded fragments. What they found shocked the world. Inside this single block of wood and bronze was a highly dense network of over 30 interlocking gears. It featured dials, pointers, and thousands of tiny Greek characters etched into the casing, essentially an instruction manual. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, and it is, by every technical definition, the world's very first analog computer. So how did this ancient computer actually work? Imagine a wooden box about the size of a shoebox. On the side was a single mechanical crank. If you turned that crank, you could move time forward or backward. And as you turned it, the gears inside executed incredibly complex mathematical calculations. On the front dial, the pointers would display the exact position of the sun and moon relative to the zodiac. But tracing a basic circle is easy. The moon doesn't move in a perfect circle. Its orbit is elliptical. Because of this, the moon actually speeds up and slows down as it gets closer and farther from the Earth. How did ancient engineers solve this using rigid metal gears? They invented something called a pin and slot mechanism. They mounted one gear slightly off-center on top of the other, connecting them with a tiny pin. As the primary gear spun at a constant speed, the pin slid back and forth on the slot of the second gear, causing it to variable cycle, speeding up and slowing down in perfect synchronization with the real moon. This isn't just craftsmanship. This is the mechanical manifestation of advanced celestial physics. If you flip the box to the back, you found two massive spiral dials. One tracked the Metonic cycle, a 19-year-old calendar that harmonizes the sun and the moon. The other tracked the Saros cycle, a 223-month loop used to predict solar and lunar eclipses down to the exact hour, decades in advance. It even changed color to indicate whether the eclipse would happen during the day or night. And just to prove how deeply woven this tech was into Greek culture, a smaller subsidiary dial calculated the exact dates for the cycle of the Pan-Hellenic Games, including the ancient Olympics. The level of engineering requires a massive intellectual ecosystem. You don't just wake up one day in the ancient world and accidentally invent microgearing. This points to an ancient Silicon Valley, a hub of elite mathematicians, astronomers, and metallurgists. So who built it? Historians have isolated a few suspects. The ship was traveling from the eastern Mediterranean, likely from the island of Rhodes. At the time, Rhodes was a massive center for astronomical study. And who lived just a few generations before this device was lost? Archimedes. Archimedes is famous for shouting "Eureka" in the bathtub, but Roman writings actually mention that he built a legendary mechanical planetarium made of bronze that could mimic the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. For centuries, historians thought those Roman texts were just exaggerations or sci-fi myths. The discovery of the Antikythera Mechanism proved the Roman texts were telling the absolute truth. Even if Archimedes didn't build this exact unit with his own hands, it was almost certainly designed by his disciples or based directly on his mathematical blueprints. But solving how it worked only unlocks a much darker, more terrifying historical mystery. Where did the technology go? If human beings were capable of building mechanical computers in 100 BC, why did it take us until the Renaissance to see a gear system like this again? Why didn't the Greeks use this tech to build a mechanical industrial revolution? Why didn't they invent steam engines or mechanized factories 2,000 years ago? The answer is a stark warning about human civilization. Technology is not a guaranteed, straight line that always goes up. It is fragile. It requires stability, wealth, and the continuous passing down of institutional knowledge. When the Roman Empire expanded and the Greek Golden Age fractured, the hyper-specialized knowledge required to cut these gears evaporated. The master blacksmiths died, the libraries were burned, the economy shifted from funding advanced science to funding basic survival and military conquest. Bronze became too valuable to waste on astronomical calculators, so older mechanisms were melted down to make swords, shields, and coins. The Antikythera Mechanism only survived because it was trapped at the bottom of the ocean, safely insulated from 2,000 years of human warfare and destruction. We love to look back at our ancestors as primitive, simple people who stared at the stars and made up myths, but the Antikythera Mechanism is a brutal reminder of the truth. We are not the first advanced civilization to walk this planet. We are just the latest ones. And if we aren't careful, the things we built today could easily become the green calcified rocks that the next civilization digs up thousands of years from now, wondering how we ever managed to build them. If you want to keep exploring the mysteries that history tried to erase, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below. Do you think there are more advanced devices still hiding at the bottom of the sea? Thanks for watching Learnt, and we'll see you in the next video.